It's done, right? There's no more wrestling. Till Monday. God damn it. It's Saturday, August 27th, 2016.
This is not a test.
This is the Wrestling News Experience. After Dark. This is the Wrestling News Experience After Dark, and I am still resisting putting Bobby Roode's theme song in my theme song. Because let's face it, it's either awesome or the thing that will destroy us all. Yes, welcome to the Wrestling News Experience. We are, of course, available on Facebook in our Facebook group, TWNE After Dark. You can follow me on Twitter at Dave the Camel. You can get access to this podcast on Spreaker.com, ForeignMania.com, iTunes, and Stitcher, and we are part of the Wrestling to the Max podcast network with websites coming soon if the legal stuff that I've been asked is any indicator. That's none of your business. Good evening. When I left you last, where were we? NXT TakeOver just happened. And NXT TakeOver was great, and I've maintained that it was still great. Anyone who says it wasn't great has way too high expectations based on the previous NXT Brooklyn, and, well, I really can't blame you for that. But since NXT, what have we had? We had 17 hours of SummerSlam, and then Raw, and SmackDown, and NXT, and the Cruiserweight Classic, and oh my god, it's too much wrestling. I've been a wrestling fan since the 80s. I have a job that pays me when I watch wrestling, and I'm sitting here telling you that was too much goddamn wrestling. And I watched it all. Some of it on fast forward. But I did watch it all, except 1 hour of the 2-hour pre-show, because let's face it, it was the pre-show. Maybe I am just crazy. But I watched it all. And there was good, and there was bad, and there was stuff in the middle, and there was so much that I don't even know where to start. I mean, we did take over last week, so we don't have to deal with that. We can start with going all the way back to SummerSlam on Sunday. Yes, from the chat, someone who actually went to all three shows last weekend, which I assume by that he means TakeOver, SummerSlam, and Raw, because they were all at the Barclays. Yeah, I can't imagine how anybody at that Raw felt like being there at all. And they did not exactly put on a great show to make up for it, and to be fair, they were again booking on the fly. But that's no excuse for giving you a Roman Reigns main event. Yeah, so SummerSlam with pre-show 6 hours long. I told you I'd missed the first hour of the pre-show, so I missed something. 12-man tag match, right? I got to see Cesaro versus Sheamus, which was match 1 of 7 and actually match 3 of 9. But who cares? They're all going to be virtually the same anyway. And, you know. Yeah. Sorry, from the chat, yeah, if they did it next year, they'll probably be skipping Raw. And you're not alone, because I've heard people who said they didn't buy tickets for Raw, but they could have gone. Obviously, they're in the neighborhood. And they just said, no, can't go back out again to another wrestling event. It's too much. It really is. And maybe I could see it once a year for WrestleMania. Because it is WrestleMania. And if you did it once a year and made it a big deal, it's still too much. But if you just do it once a year, then it's like, okay, it's a once a year thing. We'll spoil ourselves with 20 hours of wrestling in a weekend. But now we're going to do it at SummerSlam. Who's to say when do they start doing it on other pay-per-views like Survivor Series or Royal Rumble? Do they start, having an NXT show on the Saturday and making them all 4 hours long? Especially since we have brand pay-per-views, which will be shorter and have to be designated as such. It's just, it's escalating too quickly. And it's become apparent that they don't have enough time, or they don't have enough roster to have 3-hour Raws. And the roster that they do have, they're not using particularly well. But it's not entirely their fault that Finn Balor got injured, nor is it Seth Rollins' fault, which we'll get to. I don't even know where to start. SummerSlam. Let's go with the broad strokes for SummerSlam, because there were 13 goddamn matches on the show, most of which did not matter. Broad strokes. There was some good wrestling. John Cena versus AJ Styles was probably the best match of the weekend, and I do say that even after seeing TakeOver. Cena Styles, that's one of those matches where those are people who should wrestle together a lot. They didn't get it right the first time, but then they went out, they just blew it away. My thing is that they put that in the second hour of a 4-hour show, and everything after that had to follow that, and none of it could. There was no chance. And then to end the show with 2 straight no contest finishes, basically. I'm not the only one sitting here going, they built the Rusev-Roman Reigns feud backwards, right? Shouldn't the brawl have happened on Raw and the match have happened at SummerSlam? And I could harp on the fact that Roman Reigns once again looks like gigantic asshole Roman Reigns, but nobody's listening, so I'm going to stop for now. Until he wins the title tomorrow. Tomorrow, Monday, on Raw. And then the Brock Lesnar stuff at the end. I mean, obviously, there was a series of stupid decisions made, and it wasn't Brock going off on a shoot, and it wasn't fake. It was Brock thinking he knew how to do something and just making a mess out of it. And I don't want to make light of it. But when you let Brock Lesnar do whatever the hell he wants, contractually or otherwise, stuff like this is going to happen. And, I don't blame Brock. He thought he could do it, and they let him. So what was going to stop him? He gets away with everything. And it's become increasingly unrealistic that he does, because it's not like he was in a good match there. It's not like he's going to be around till January. And it's not like he's moving buy rates, ratings, or any other sort of money for WWE. Why are they paying him? That's what this comes down to. It wasn't a life-threatening injury to Randy Orton, and Brock wasn't taking liberties because Randy Orton was on board, allegedly. So my real question is, why are they paying Brock Lesnar to do these shitty non-finished matches that won't have a follow-up? It's not like Randy Orton and he are going to have a match at Clash of Champions to make up for this. They did a non-finish because Brock's not going to be there, but they don't want him to lose, and Randy Orton can't lose either because he's got to stick around and be part of SmackDown. So what was the point? And why are we paying Brock Lesnar $11 bajillion to wrestle crappy non-finished matches at your second biggest pay-per-view? That's the real question. And of course, coming out of SummerSlam, we got our first Universal Champion who vacated the title after one day because of an injury. And, shit happens, but man, that was the worst possible. To go from the Finn Balor comes in and gets a push like nobody has in a long time. Like, the Shield didn't win a title in their first pay-per-view appearance. He's the first WWE superstar in history to win a world title in his pay-per-view debut. He, on his first night on the main roster, he beat 5 of their top stars, including Roman Reigns, clean one-on-one. This guy was a guy who, cynical or not, they had plans for. And after one night as the Universal Champion, he has to vacate the title and be gone for 6 months because of an unfortunate accident. And I still love Bret Hart, the performer, but I'm getting really tired of Bret Hart, the sanctimonious asshole. Like, in case you hadn't heard, Bret Hart, somebody, of course, went through Bret Hart for a statement on Seth Rollins because he's been so vocal about Seth Rollins injuring people in the past, and he basically just went once again with the "I don't like to say I told you so." Well, it doesn't sure as shit doesn't sound like you don't like to say you told you so, because everybody who says I don't like to tell you so actually does. And he just went off on Rollins again, and not just on Rollins. By the way, Rollins is reckless and needs to change things. And while I do agree that maybe he should retire the buckle bomb because there is so much risk involved on both parties' parts, I'm not saying it was Seth Rollins' fault that Sting got injured or that Baylor got injured, but it's a dangerous move, and they've taken away less dangerous moves for less reason. But he went off on Seth. He went off on WWE producers and saying they were doing stuff like they were probably slapping him on the back and saying, "Great job." I'm like, you're not even there. I'm sure they're just as concerned about the fact that it's starting to look like Seth Rollins is injuring people. They're not out there just endorsing this. And then calling Samoa, like just going completely off topic and calling Samoa Joe's Muscle Buster a deadly finisher. And yes, Tyson Kidd was tragically injured taking a Muscle Buster, which is a modified, at the base, a modified suplex. And Tyson Kidd has a long career with a bad neck. It's unfortunate, but I can't find it in me to blame Joe, who actually had made his move safer when he came to WWE. Here's the thing. Bret Hart thinks because he never deliberately injured somebody in the ring during his entire career, that nobody can injure anybody or they're reckless. And good for Bret Hart that he didn't injure anybody in the ring. That's great. That is an incredible career of skill and timing and incredible luck. Because sometimes accidents happen and you can't just blame the wrestler and call him reckless because something happened. You know, that's what bugs me, is because I still want to have respect for Bret Hart because I loved him as a kid. He was one of the reasons I watched professional wrestling. And as he's grown older, he's become this guy, and he's become this public grump about like how nobody can measure up to him. And it bothers me when people when he comes out and says stuff like that, and about how things were better in his day. Well, you know why wrestlers, part of the reason why you may not have realized you injured somebody in the ring, because 90% of the wrestlers during Bret Hart's time were coked up on steroids and massive painkiller addictions. Maybe they were hurt and they just didn't say anything. And given the choice of everybody hiding their injuries and developing pill addictions, or this modern era where sometimes the Universal Champion gets hurt winning the title and has to vacate the next day, oh well, but at least he'll have a long career and not fuck up his shoulder even more by trying to wrestle through it. I will take this one. The disappointments and all, the fact that it means that Roman Reigns is back in the world title picture and may win the title again on Monday. I will take that. Because it's, even if you may think, there's not recklessness, but injuries are up. Yes, they are. Because they're not working through them, they're not hiding them. And that's a good thing. You think that, I don't know, like, it's why it bugs me when I hear things like Dan O'Brien, and yeah, The Miz cut a great promo on Dan O'Brien, but when you do stuff like that and you make it part of the TV show, and you can see on Dan O'Brien's face that if he could, he'd get back in the ring tomorrow, and you sit there and go, if you go back in the ring, you could die. And you still want to get back in the ring? And it worries me about the old school mentality of wrestle through injuries. And I'm veering wildly off topic, but I think, and I'm not saying that the WWE didn't clear it and Dan O'Brien didn't know it was coming, because he did, but it almost seems cruel to put Dan O'Brien back on TV and create a storyline about the fact that he can't wrestle. Because he can't, and he shouldn't. And suggesting that there are options where he could gives him false hope and gives fans false hope. And when there's fans getting false hope, it's just a matter of time before he says to hell with it and gets into a ring somewhere. And it bugs the crap out of me. And it bugs the crap out of me when Bret Hart who's a respected veteran of the industry, starts talking like crap about modern wrestlers who are safe and as safe as you can be in a wrestling business. And when an accident happens, there's Bret Hart to talk about how this would have never happened if I were in the ring. You were a special case. You know what? Of all the wrestlers who've never wrestled, who have never injured anybody in the ring, there's probably a class of one. And it's him. And unfortunately, he has multiple public forums to talk about that every time somebody gets hurt. And that bothers me as well. Because, things aren't going to change in the way he wants them to change. Do you want to go back to the days where people hid injuries and covered them up and ended up getting screwed up even worse? No. Anyway, so now we're on the Raw, and we've got no Universal Champion, so we have to, of course, do some sort of tournament-style thing or series of matches or whatever. And the first thing I'm going to get off, because somebody mentioned it in the chat while I was talking about something else, is the fact that you're having this, tournament series of matches that amounts to a tournament to get into a Fatal 4-Way, and you don't include Sheamus and Cesaro, who are, I guess, apparently now the best of 7 is for a championship opportunity, although that's never been mentioned until Monday. Why you don't, you cut short Rusev's feud with Roman Reigns to put them in the matches. Could you not cut short this best of 7 because it's all hands on deck because we need a new Universal Champion? And, put them in there? Instead, we've got Big Cass as a top 4 contender for the WWE Universal title, and I like Big Cass and Enzo as much as the next person. But when you're saying that they're one of the 8 best challengers on Raw for the Universal title, I have to laugh at you very, very, very hard. What did they do to earn that title? Even the match to get the title shot. They lost the night before. Who did they wrestle? Oh, Jericho and Owens were both in. But shouldn't, by that token, Gallows and Anderson won their match? Shouldn't they be part of it? It just bugs me, and it also kind of bugs me that despite having the fully healthy Sami Zayn available, he goes out to Seth Rollins. And nothing against Big Cass, but wouldn't Sami Zayn have been a better 4th choice for that match? And don't say that, it's because they're bending over backwards to not have Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn fight each other so soon after their... You know what? If that's the case, why did they draft them to the same brand? If we're going to keep doing this booking gymnastics that seem to be designed to screw over Sami Zayn for some reason, why did you draft him to the same brand as the guy who he said he's not going to fight anymore ever? Or why did you make the stipulation where they had a match where this was going to be the last time they fought? So, instead of some decent new contenders, we get the same old guys, Kevin Owens and Big Cass. This match next Monday, well, first of all, you look at it, there's only 3 contenders out of 4, because there's no chance in hell that Big Cass is becoming the 2nd Universal Champion. Then you've got Seth Rollins, who putting the title on is largely useless. You've got Roman Reigns, who putting the title on is going to drive business further into the gutter. And Kevin Owens, who I agree from the chat, Owens should win. Because if you believe it, the planned feud was Kevin Owens versus Finn Balor. And I believe Kevin Owens would be fine as the Universal Champion, and I believe that Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns should be nowhere near it because they've been too close to it for the past 2 years. If you want to try something new, you've got to try something new. And that's kind of, again, why Big Cass shouldn't be in there, because he's so clearly, obviously not a contender. You could have put anyone in that spot as the surprise 4th underdog contender, and Sami Zayn would have been perfect. Or you could have even put Neville, or someone of that level. Or say, I don't know, Cesaro. And the match would be better, because you think Big Cass is going to be carrying that match at all? And you'd have a guy who people say, hey, he might be a good underdog decision and maybe make, not even if he wins, but if he puts on a good showing, you've got a credible feud for afterwards. That doesn't involve going back to the Rollins or Reigns well. They can fight each other for not the title as long as they want. But this whole thing where Roman Reigns is still the star despite not being the champion and despite not actually being a star is kind of hitting a critical mass sort of thing. Where if he wins the title on Monday, what's the direction of this company? And you can say you can't blame them because they didn't see Finn Balor coming, but why is your backup plan the guy who has failed for the last 2 years? There were like 6 other plans that would have made more sense than saying, okay, so now Roman Reigns is back in the world title picture. I guess it's better than the other thing where he could have gotten another U.S. title shot, even though he basically blew up his own U.S. title shot the night before. The thing that's really getting aggravating, and I know other people have mentioned this before, is the fact that Roman Reigns continues to get these chances. Like, he had a U.S. title match on Sunday and decided that instead he was going to beat the shit out of Rusev and not have a match, which clearly was going to lead to a rematch for the U.S. title. But he just had the match and he decided he didn't want to have it. So why does he get another one? Why are Cesaro and Sheamus fighting each other 9 times for originally no purpose, but now a championship opportunity, which you'll notice does not say Universal title, when you could have just had them fight for the Universal title or to be number 1 contenders for the Universal title the minute you found out that, hey, Finn Balor's gone for 6 months. But instead, you didn't even have the number 2 match. This feud is going, like, Clash of Champions is 5 weeks away. They don't have enough time to have 7 matches. The 7th match will not coincide at Clash of Champions. They're going to carry this thing on for 2 months. If that's what this Monday indicated to me, is that if they're going to take weeks off from a best of 7 series and not even have them on TV, they're saying that this is going to be resolved at whatever pay-per-view happens in October for SmackDown. That should worry, or for Raw, sorry. That's what I'm worried about, is that they've absolutely nothing for these two to do, so they've stuck them into a dead-end 2-month feud. And all credit to both of them, I don't see them able to put on 7 different matches, even if they're good wrestlers, because there's not enough between them to work with. We have seen the Cesaro-Sheamus match before. We saw it 2 weeks before they started the best of 7. There are only so many variations to that match. But meanwhile, your main event is possibly going to crash and burn. And I realize that they can suddenly make this not an issue if Kevin Owens gets the title, and suddenly it becomes a jealousy thing with Chris Jericho, and that's kind of cool. And that's the thing. As good as the Cesaro-Sheamus matches are, even as good as the one at SummerSlam was, and it was good, why do I care? At that point, they hadn't even announced what it was for, just that they were going to wrestle 7 times. And the only way to really save that is if the championship opportunity is for the Universal title and they actually win. And by they, I mean Cesaro. Otherwise, it was just, we killed 2 months. And yeah, they got a title shot, but they didn't win, so who cares? That's kind of the issue, is that they can say that Raw started out so strong, and of course they did because they gave away marquee matches in the first night after the brand extension. But you can see the cracks just on a regular basis, and it's the cracks that come from having a 3-hour show that you don't have enough roster for or enough creativity to make 3-hour shows, and because nobody does. There is no creative 3-hour weekly show. That's why the only 3-hour show on TV that runs on a weekly basis is Monday Night Raw. hell, we've got people on regular television reaching the point where they realize that 2-hour season premieres and season finales are too long because audiences won't pay attention. And you expect people to pay attention to Raw for 3 hours? Someone said something about, you talk about how the third hour dip in viewers, which has happened basically every week forever. They talk about how the third hour dip is inevitable because people will go watch something else. It's actually not inevitable. There was a period when viewers actually went up for the third hour because the third hour was the Daniel Bryan show. As in, there was a Daniel Bryan match in the main event because he was in the main event at that point and stayed in to watch him. They haven't had that in a while, so they just said, well, third hour dips happened. Well, if third hour dips happen, why do we have a third hour? Because I, as part of my job, I watch the ratings every week. And you know what I see? I see you start at this point every week, somewhere around over 3 million. Viewership goes up nearly every week for the second hour, which means more people tune in to the show as it goes on. And then once the second hour ends, they dive 300,000 viewers or more. You know why? It's not because the show gets any better or worse. It's because it's too long. People are done after 2 hours. And we haven't even gotten to the good part of Raw, which is that Bayley debuted. Long awaited, long overdue. Good to have Bayley out there. The only downside is that I have tickets to NXT TakeOver in Kitchener in September, and she won't be there. I really did want a hug. Which is probably creepy, but I don't care. But good for her. She deserves it. She should be a big star if they don't fumble that down the drain too, because actually at this point the women's division is the one that's actually working. At least on Raw. Over on SmackDown, you know what? SmackDown's been a good show. And the viewers are actually starting to reflect that. They're going up because the Olympics are over. But the viewerships are going up. It's getting more viewers than it was before the draft. And the shows they're getting to watch are pretty good. Things are happening logically. Divisions are being built. You know, everybody's fighting with purpose on SmackDown. And part of it is, it's a 2-hour show. They can't waste time. That means you won't get some 20-minute matches, but at the same time, that means that you won't burn out your wrestlers quite so fast. Now, I'm still baffled by the Eva Marie thing. When she comes back in a month, that people are still going to be loving her heel act. I'm like, do you still realize she has to wrestle at some point, right? And yes, I am thrilled because if they don't put the championship on AJ Styles at Backlash, they have no idea what they're doing. Which I believe they are. They are totally going to put the title on AJ Styles at Backlash because they're clearly not idiots. You don't have AJ Styles beat John Cena at SummerSlam and then not immediately put the title on him. Especially since he's at an age where you can only count on him for a few years, so you might as well get the money now. And that's great. That's good. I think SmackDown is booking logically and well, and again, they have a thin roster, so there's some problems there. But they're covering well. They've got a tag team tournament going on to fill time. They've got all 6 women who are currently not suspended involved in a match at SmackDown, so you can, fill segments with that. They're rebuilding Bray Wyatt somewhat, although I assume it's just to lose to Randy Orton, but whatever. Yes, if Eva never got suspended, she was winning that women's title at Backlash. I would actually have bet that as well. And again, I point out that at some point she's going to have to wrestle, and you are going to realize that what have you wrought? Because she's still, I bet, terrible. And yeah, I mean, it's a heel thing, but I mean, wouldn't it be nice if the heel that wasn't wrestling was because you knew they could wrestle and do it very well? But I guess they wouldn't get the same heat. I don't know. On a note for the title belts, I actually like the SmackDown belts. I know they're not creative, and I know one of them is a replica of the Copper Penny SmackDown titles, but I think, or the Copper Penny Raw titles. But I think the thing about it is the silver on dark blue actually looks really nice. I would never wear one of those belts, But I think that SmackDown tag titles, which I wish they would not call the SmackDown tag titles because the Raw belts are not called the Raw tag titles. But I think they look pretty nice. The women's title, of course, looks nice because it's just the same one with a different color backing, but it's the dark blue, and I like blue. So that's part of it. But I think aesthetically, even though it is, again, the stupid round tag title belts with the stupid Spartan helmets on it, the colors work. It's not like the Universal title where the red is just garish. I looked at those and I said, yeah, maybe it's because they're shiny and new and cool, but I think they look good. Yes, the SmackDown also had the heel turn for Carmella, which makes sense. You know what? If you're not going to put her with Enzo and Cass, you can't just have her out there aping their act because she's not as good at it. And if the crowd wasn't look what happened. The crowd wasn't reacting to her, so they turned, and Nikki Bella was getting massive face heat for coming back from her injury. So they did a double turn, and hey, they changed course after 3 weeks of realizing Carmella wasn't working. We went a different direction. It's like the guy who used to book booking NXT is in charge of booking SmackDown. Oh wait, he is. And that's probably part of it, because what I find when I'm watching SmackDown is the touches that actually made NXT good is things like that. We changed direction on a character because it wasn't working, and we just did it on television, and you understand why we did it, and it makes sense, and everything works out. And, you know, we're doing matches where every match has stakes. One thing I've said, I know I've said this a couple months ago, everything in NXT is either for a title or for positioning for a title, or revenge because you didn't win a title. Those are the three tenets of NXT matches, or, you know, squash matches. But those are the tenets of NXT, and you see them again on SmackDown. Every match is either for a title, or to qualify for a title, or because you got screwed out of a title and want to get revenge on the person who screwed you. It's stakes, and it works. And on Raw, you've just got meandering stuff. And yeah, there are stakes on Raw. But at the same time, you know, the other half the show that don't have stakes just kind of meanders along. And it's why Braun Strowman will be squashing people for 4 or 5 more weeks before if he ever even gets a feud. Yeah, sure, it's great. He's squashing hands to tell, and that's good and that's cool, and whatever the hell that guy was saying, whatever. I sincerely hope that was ad-libbed, because if WWE scripted that, we're not going to let them touch any LGBT characters right now. But my thing is that, yeah, there are stakes, but at the same time, there's also a whole bunch of stuff that isn't. And SmackDown is stakes from beginning to end. Everything that happens on SmackDown matters. Half of what happens on Raw doesn't matter. Now we had NXT, which was more stuff from Brooklyn, and it was okay. And, you know. And, okay, so from the chat, we'll talk about, like we said about the Bryan Miz promo, which was excellent. And the Miz is great at promos and average at wrestling, so that's okay. Who faces Miz at Backlash? Yeah, Ziggler's as good a choice as any, with Miz probably retaining, yes, because Ziggler should not be winning the Intercontinental title. But I guess I could see it with Bryan coming up with someone to beat the Miz. I don't know. I just wish they'd stop implying that Daniel Bryan's going to get back in the ring when he absolutely should not. But it's good, and, like, I wish stuff like that would happen on television, but I understand why some of this stuff has to go under the radar. Honestly, Talking Smack is on TV up here in Canada, so it's on right after SmackDown. I don't have to turn to the network or anything. So it's right there. I would guess, yeah, they will have Daniel Bryan come up with a challenger for Miz who will likely lose to the Miz, and then they'll come up with another one, or eventually somebody will beat the Miz, and that would be a big thing. But yeah, I'm okay with that. We got over to have him bring up Joe to beat Miz. That would be a thing. I think Joe's sticking around for at least a couple more months to get a rematch with Shinsuke, but that would be something to do. I don't want to say anything because I did vaguely read the NXT tapings, and I think Joe was on them, so I don't want to say that he's coming up. Yeah, so NXT was good. It's just the dark matches from Brooklyn, and then the Cruiserweight Classic, which was again more great matches. And if you're not watching the Cruiserweight Classic, although numbers suggest that everybody is, good stuff there. I'm sorry Johnny Gargano's out because I had him picked in a pool, but they had some great stuff. And the thing about the Cruiserweight Classic is that they're just letting guys wrestle their own styles and they're getting over with them. And what a concept. And yeah, they'll have to tone themselves down and become a little safer for Monday nights, but for me, it's been real fun watching different styles of matches because we have watched WWE style for so long that was the thing about the Cruiserweights, even on Nitro, was that it wasn't that they were better than some of the wrestlers on the roster because they were just like any other wrestlers. There were good ones and there were bad ones. It was different. And that's what the Cruiserweight division, when it comes to Raw after the Cruiserweight Classic, has to be. It has to be different. It can't just be small guys wrestle WWE style. You have to let the guys like the Drew Gulaks be themselves, and the Ibushi, if that ever sorts out, and whatever. You have to let them to a certain extent be themselves and be different from everybody else. Otherwise, what's the point of a Cruiserweight division if they're just smaller guys wrestling the same style as everybody else? So we'll see about that. And hey, at least they'll have to design a new belt for that one. How long before Ciampa turns on Gargano? I'm going to say not long. I'm going to say they will probably lose a rematch to the Revival at some point. Maybe as part of the Dusty Classic, which I assume is coming up shortly. I don't know specifically when. But yeah, I would suspect either they'll lose a tag title rematch or they will lose because of the heel turn. But yeah, the heel turn is coming. Yeah, as much as I love Ciampa Gargano on Raw or SmackDown, they're good talent to have on NXT right now because they're good workers. Like, they're literally good workers who can work with other people. And they would just get lost on Raw or SmackDown. Maybe not so much on SmackDown. And can I say I love the idea of the tag team name of Do It Yourself? Because I can't afford a shirt, but if I could afford a shirt, the one that says on the back, because no one else will do it for you. That's beautiful. That's great creative stuff that you don't see often enough. It's a perfect idea for a name. That's why they're called Do It Yourself. It's almost inspirational. But yeah, it's been such a week. There's been so much wrestling, and it's hard to believe, really, that there's been so much. And it doesn't slow down. We got Backlash in a couple weeks. And then Clash of Champions in another couple weeks after that. And I don't know how we're going to handle having 19 pay-per-views a year. Poorly, I would imagine. But we'll see. I think that's my thing, is the single brand pay-per-views will be a sign of how thin the rosters are. Because you will see, that was the problem in the old ones, was that the single brand pay-per-views, the rosters were so damn thin that first of all, it was a struggle to get 7 or 8 matches on the card, and second of all, if anybody got hurt, you just scuttled the entire pay-per-view because there were no replacements. Now they have NXT for that at this point, but that only gets you so far. What I'd really like to see, and which is not going to happen, yeah, Backlash on paper will be good. You got the Six Packs Challenge, you got a tag title match, you're going to have Ambrose versus AJ Styles. It's already good on paper. Beyond those 3 matches, I'm not sure what else will happen. Baron Corbin, Kalisto, perhaps. But you'll see the depth come into play, and they sit there and they go, and you go, what I'd like to see, that's what I started to say, what I'd like to see, which won't happen, is that the single brand pay-per-view should be 2 hours. You have this infinite pay-per-view time. It doesn't matter how long your pay-per-views are. Why does they have to all be 3 hours? if you don't have the depth for them to be 3 hours. I think a lot of people would rather have 2 2-hour pay-per-views in a month than 1 3.5-hour pay-per-view, which are still going to happen in the big fours, but it does seem like a good idea, especially when the roster depth is not good. And that's like Clash of Champions will have, we know it'll have a Sheamus Cesaro match at some point. There'll be a Universal title match. It's still a little far away to try to decide that stuff, but things will happen. Yeah, but yeah, even looking at Backlash, beyond those 3 matches, who's left? You've got all the women in the one match. You've got the 2 relevant tag teams in another match, and you've got your world title match. And I guess there'll be a Miz match. That's 4. I mean, you've built a card already. It's going to be those undercard matches that it's going to be like, that's where you have to exercise your creativity. You have to make something for those guys who aren't just fighting for titles and give them something to do. And yes, I think Money in the Bank should be both brands. That's from the chat. When it comes back around. If it comes back around, maybe they'll just put it back at WrestleMania, which wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. But I wonder if that counts as, because 19 pay-per-views a year, there's the big 4. There should be 20 pay-per-views in a year, which means that one of the minor pay-per-views is going to be dual brand, which makes me wonder if that's going to be Money in the Bank. Or they're just taking out the pay-per-view in February, which I would also not be against them doing. I don't know. I forgot what the schedule is, but when you do the math, 19 pay-per-views a year, which is what's being advertised on the network, means that one of the months there will only be 1 pay-per-view instead of 2 single brand. Because you have the big 4, which leaves you 8 months. 2 pay-per-views a month is 16. That's 20. So what's 19? So 1 month there's going to be 1 pay-per-view, and what month is that? I don't know. I'd have to look it up, and I'm lazy. So like I said, it's not been all good. It's not been all bad. There's been a lot of stuff in the middle, and there was a lot of it. That's the best summary I can come up with. This week, hopefully, a little less and a little better. What more can you ask for? Except for not a second final deletion, which apparently we're going to get anyway. We'll not go into that. Okay, there you go. Somebody looked it up for me. Yes, the June pay-per-view, the Money in the Bank pay-per-view will be dual brand. Which makes sense. And that means there will likely be 2 Money in the Bank matches. It's the only one that makes sense. If they're not going to move Money in the Bank, you can't have it be a single brand pay-per-view, because you can't give only one brand Money in the Bank. I mean, if they were, they'd give it to Raw, but whatever. So that was, another good week. Another average week, I guess. As for me, Legion drops on Tuesday, so I'll be playing World of Warcraft a lot. If you'd like to come and join me, I have a tune on Cho'Gao. You can find me under Dave the Camel, #1987. If you want to chat about Legion, it looks pretty good. If you've been out a while, this looks like a good time to get back in. Not that I'm shilling for them at all, but of course, you can follow me along at my day job, Goliath.com, which has been quoted in such luminary internet sites as the Bleacher Report, so that felt good. Of course, you can follow us on Facebook at TWNE After Dark. You can follow me on Twitter at Dave the Camel. You can get this podcast at the usual sources, including iTunes and Stitcher and Spreaker.com, and you can also find us on the Wrestling to the Max podcast network, which, like I said, will have a website. That is my understanding. I'm not directly involved with the website, but I understand one is being built. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, I want to thank people for listening to the live show, thank people listening at all. Try and see you again next week at about the same time. So we will talk to you later. Have a good one. Always be a fan.